I'm Jason with the All Things Open team. I'm here with Alya. We're going to talk about collaboration, communication tools, and more. Welcome to the We Love Open Source studio. Please introduce yourself to the All Things Open community.
All right. Hi, folks. My name is Alya. I work on the Zulip open source project. It's an open source alternative to something like a Slack or Discord. It's a team chat app that's more organized than the rest, which really helps with having conversations not just in real time, but async as well. And at Zulip, I am the product lead for the project, as well as doing a lot of our community management and many other hats that I wear, but those are the biggest ones, I would say.
Great. Well, thanks for the work you do. We appreciate it. What's exciting about collaboration and better communication in open source communities?
Yeah, so I think the thing that's really amazing about open source is how it's a bunch of people coming together, maybe from all over the world, all sorts of different backgrounds, to just make something awesome happen together. And a really important piece of that is having them be able to actually communicate, collaborate, connect with each other. And so, I think that's a really critical piece of how people are getting things to happen, getting awesome projects done. And it's maybe a bigger challenge for open source communities than it is for your traditional company or something building software, because people are scattered, people have different expectations, people have different other commitments. This is maybe something they're doing as a side project, so they're not around all the time. They have limited and variable availability, and there's less of a structure that's inherent in the organization, and so that makes the communication even that much more important.
Got it. Sounds good. Do you have a specific experience that got you interested in open source communities?
Yeah, so I really got to know open source communities much better after I joined Zulip, and we offer free hosting for open source communities, and so I started as a product lead talking to a lot of the folks who are using Zulip and trying to understand what they do, and even just seeing applications come in for that free hosting and being like, oh, that's a cool project. I'm so glad you're doing that. And oh, this is really neat. I'm so glad somebody's out there doing that. One of the maybe really neat ones for me personally is my background is I was a math major, and one of the bigger communities that's using Zulip is for the Lean Prover project, and what they're doing is automated proofs for mathematical theorems. Right now they're working on an automated proof that you can completely verify from end to end for Fermat's last theorem. So it's a really ambitious project, and they're using Zulip to coordinate their work of these mathematicians, and they have an open source project that goes along with it. And so that's just really motivating for me. It's really exciting to see folks coming together to do the kind of ambitious work.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing. What factors should people consider when they're choosing a communication tool for their community or their project?
Yeah, I have a multifaceted answer on that one. So one piece of it is, so when I have 3 kids, and when we started hiring a nanny for our oldest, my husband actually went out and read a book with instructions for how to hire a nanny. And the first thing it said is identify your set of requirements. And it sort of sounds obvious once you hear it, but a lot of us, the things that we do very naturally in our professional lives, when it's something more of a hobby, a side passion, we don't necessarily approach it with the same amount of structure. So, if any company was going to go out and procure a team chat solution, I'm using this company vocabulary around it, right? They would have a checklist of what are the requirements, what are we actually looking for? Whereas I think when it's more of a project, something that's a little more loose, our intuition is oh, well, I know about this thing, maybe we'll just do that, and that can cause a lot of regret down the line. So I think my first piece of advice is to really think about how you want to be using this tool and what your requirements are, what are the things that are important, what are nice to haves, and really actually take a structured look at it, because communication tools are so important for how we're going to be doing that work. And you don't want to have regrets later for not having thought about it. And sort of as part of that, I think a story I hear a lot from folks, and it's come up a bunch actually during this conference, is that people's communication ends up being split across a bunch of different tools, because none of these tools are actually doing everything that they need. So they'll be okay, well, we have a Discord, which is nice for real time, but it's terrible for like referring to things later. So, and some people don't want to use it because they don't want, I don't know, to be advertised quests for games. So, all right, we also have a discourse forum, and we also use email list because we have some folks who are old school. And it's a huge pain to like manage these disparate tools. So to the extent that you can think about like a coherent way that you'll have a limited number of products and how they'll interconnect with each other, that can be really powerful. So like for us, we use our own Zulip team chat for like the kind of discussions, and then we use GitHub, which you could also think of as a communication tool, and we always cross-link. So we'll say, okay, we're discussing this issue, and then in the issue we'll link to the conversation thread, and those two work really nicely together and have different purposes, and we're not stuck like trying to figure out where are we having this conversation, do I need to jump between, are some people in one place and some in another.
Great, thanks for sharing that. Do you see any trends, either good or bad, that are affecting open source today?
Yeah, so I think one trend that's been rough is how a lot of the platforms we use, even as open source projects, are not open source platforms. They're proprietary platforms that we, like things like Slack and Discord, that are owned by corporations and have kind of very different approach to the world than a lot of like open source folks do. And they really think of it as, they don't give us the tools to like own our own data, own our own like communication history. Like Slack limits how much you can access messages via their API. Discord doesn't even have like a built-in export tool that will let you get your data out if you decide to move somewhere else. So I think that's been a trend that we're with the advent of AI, they're more and more viewing your data as like an asset that they have. And that's something like with Zulip we really want to give people an alternative to.
Really cool. So you're somewhat new to the world of open source. What advice would you give someone who's just getting started?
Yeah, so I've been a maintainer now for 4 years, and we have a very active community. We see a lot of folks coming in, and one piece of context that I think it's important for people to have when they're starting out is that maintainers are really busy, and oftentimes they can't like necessarily handhold you through every step of the process. So what I would actually recommend is, if you're brand new, look for projects that have really good documentation for contributors, because that's where the maintainers have made the investment to really teach you everything that you need to know, without, because they just can't necessarily do that one-on-one, but those can be really amazing resources to learn from, and probably a lot of what one project will teach you will carry over to how you work on another project down the line. But those kinds of projects where it's really clear, and that also means, it's a signal also that that project likes to have folks joining in, likes community contributions. That's something they're excited about. So that's something I would look for.
Sounds great. Well, we talked about how they can contribute, but how do they actually find a project to contribute to? What would you recommend there?
Yeah, I think one piece of that is look for something that you're personally going to be excited about, because it can be, especially if you're new to it, it can be a challenging process. You might get a lot of like feedback that you need to address, and you don't want to just kind of lose motivation halfway through, and then you've wasted your time, you've wasted maintainer time. So it can be like a tool that you actually use, or it can be just something that's like you're interested in. Like maybe you're super into astronomy. Find a research project in astronomy that you might be able to contribute to. It can be pretty broad, but something that will actually make you excited and motivated.
Great. I think that's great advice. We're going to change gears just a little bit. I want to know, do you have any new tools that you've been using to boost your own productivity lately?
Okay, so this is like kind of a funny way of combining tools, but as part of my role as a maintainer, I'm subscribed to like the full fire hose of GitHub comments. So every single PR, every single comment, every single issue, I want to look at everything that's going on in the project, and that the kind of built-in GitHub tooling doesn't really let you do that in a very ergonomic way. So what I've actually set up is I've configured email notifications for all of that to go, and for the email I used a private channel in the Zulip development community. So now I'm getting these email notifications going into topics in my chat channel, private channel, and so I'm looking at it topic by topic, where every topic is a single issue or a pull request. And that's how I make sure I see every single thing that's going into the repository. But it's like super quick. Like if I don't need to take an action, it's super quick to just get everything, like skim, go, next.
I love hearing how people are increasing their productivity. It's so good, and saving time too. Do you have a tip, best practice, or any career advice that you could share with the All Things Open community?
Yeah, so one thing I've been thinking about a lot, actually, being at a conference now, is a tip I got, a piece of advice I got in grad school from one of my advisors. And that's when you're at a talk, like at a conference or a meetup or anywhere where you're like listening to somebody speak, try to prepare during the talk to ask a good question. And that has like two things that it's going to really help you with. One is, as you're listening to the talk, you'll be really thinking about the material and asking yourself, okay, what do I understand? Where are the gaps? What are the implications I'm not quite following? So it'll really help you focus on that content. And then if you actually do ask that question, that can be really great especially for folks who are more junior, getting more like visibility and like establishing a presence at a conference, or maybe folks will come up to chat with you afterwards, or just in the audience. They're like, that's a great question. I had a similar question. Let's chat. So that's really good for folks.
Great. Thanks for sharing. All right, Alya, are you ready for the hot fix minute?
I think so. Let's try it.
All right. These have been fun. Linux, Mac, or Windows?
Currently Mac.
Okay. Books, movies, or podcasts?
Podcasts.
Pizza, salad, or tacos?
Ooh, tacos.
Rock, country, or hip hop?
Rock.
Star Wars, Star Trek, or stargazing?
I'll say stargazing.
Android or iPhone?
Android.
ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini?
ChatGPT, but it's not like a deeply considered choice.
And the final question, the future of AI will be a bunch of helper bots or robot takeover?
Oh gosh. Impossible to know.
Oh, that's great. That's great. All right, you survived the hot fix minute. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.